lousy rooms to great rooms. And so it wasn't just the public just think, oh, you were only together 5 years, we've only got 5 million.
In the complex world of rock history, there existed a figure whose razor-sharp tongue could cut as deep as his revolutionary music. John Lennon, the Beatle-turned-peace activist, wasn't just a groundbreaking songwriter who helped reshape popular culture. He was also brutally honest about his fellow musicians in ways that created legendary animosity throughout his career. Welcome to another episode of Offstage Tales, where today we're exposing the harsh reality of John Lennon and the 6 musicians who felt the sting of his unfiltered opinions. The Liverpool legend behind Imagine and A Hard Day's Night was notorious for his cutting remarks and uncompromising standards that apparently left several major artists nursing wounded egos. "I believe in everything until it's disproved," Lennon once famously declared. "So I believe in fairies, myths, dragons. It all exists, even if it's in your mind." Unfortunately for some musicians, his belief in their talent was decidedly limited. From backstage confrontations to devastating public put-downs, Lennon's battles with these artists reveal a man who valued authenticity above diplomacy. Some of these conflicts erupted in famous interviews, others festered through years of professional rivalry, but all showcase the uncompromising perfectionist behind the peace symbol. Prepare yourself for some brutal honesty as we count down the 6 musicians who discovered that crossing John Lennon meant facing one of music's sharpest critics. 6. Mick Jagger. Coming in at number 6 on our countdown is Mick Jagger, the Rolling Stones frontman who reportedly became the target of John Lennon's class-conscious criticism. The tension between these British rock titans went far beyond the famous Beatles versus Stones rivalry that dominated the 1960s music press. The conflict reportedly stemmed from Lennon's perception that Jagger was a manufactured rebel. According to Beatles biographer Philip Norman, Lennon privately told associates that Jagger was a middle-class kid from Dartford pretending to be a dangerous blues man and that his rebellious image was carefully calculated rather than genuine.
Lonely. Oh, John, Mick and I have been performing together for years now.
What bothered Lennon wasn't just Jagger's background, but what he saw as calculated authenticity. While Lennon came from genuine working-class Liverpool struggles, he reportedly viewed Jagger's bad boy persona as what he called posh boy rebellion, designed for maximum commercial impact without real risk. "Some people are born rebels, others just play them on television," Lennon allegedly told Melody Maker in 1970, without naming names but clearly referencing the Stones' carefully crafted image. Industry insiders knew exactly who he meant. The rivalry intensified during the late 1960s when both bands were exploring different musical directions. At a London party in 1969, witnesses claim Lennon openly mocked Jagger's stage moves, reportedly telling other guests, "Watch him practice being dangerous in the mirror before every show." Despite public pleasantries between the bands, Lennon never softened his private assessment of Jagger as someone who had manufactured his rebel credentials for commercial success. 5. Elvis Presley. At number 5, we have Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, whose later career reportedly disgusted John Lennon to the point of public condemnation.
Each charted course, each careful step along.
The conflict between these two rock legends represented a generational clash about artistic integrity versus commercial success. The tension began in the late 1960s, when Elvis was performing in Las Vegas, while Lennon was pushing musical boundaries with experimental albums.
You went to see those movies with Elvis or somebody in it when we were still in Liverpool, and you'd see everybody waiting to see him, right?
According to music journalist Ray Coleman, Lennon privately referred to Elvis as a revolutionary who sold his soul to Colonel Parker and became everything rock and roll was supposed to destroy. What infuriated Lennon wasn't Elvis's early influence, which he acknowledged, but his transformation into what Lennon saw as establishment entertainment. While Lennon was risking his career with controversial political statements and avant-garde music, Elvis was playing it safe with what John reportedly called neutered rock for middle-aged tourists in rhinestone jumpsuits. Nothing personal against Elvis, but he could have been our greatest, and he just stopped trying, Lennon told Rolling Stone in 1970, one of his rare public criticisms of the king. He's like a guy who won the lottery and decided to spend it all on hamburgers. The disappointment reached its peak when Elvis met President Nixon in 1970, receiving a federal narcotics badge while publicly supporting anti-drug efforts. Lennon reportedly told friends this was the final betrayal of everything rock and roll once represented. Despite acknowledging Elvis's foundational importance, Lennon never forgave what he saw as the king's abandonment of rock's rebellious spirit for comfortable conformity. Number 4 brings us to Wings and Paul McCartney's solo career, which reportedly became the target of John Lennon's most personal and brutal musical criticism. The conflict between these former songwriting partners represented one of music's most painful public divorces. The tension exploded after the Beatles' breakup when McCartney formed Wings and began releasing what Lennon saw as lightweight pop music. According to Beatles historian Mark Lewisohn, Lennon privately told associates that Wings was Paul's desperate attempt to prove he didn't need the rest of us, but all he's proving is that he never understood what made us great. What bothered Lennon wasn't just the music itself, but what it represented about their partnership's end. While Lennon was exploring experimental sounds with Yoko Ono and tackling serious political themes, McCartney was achieving commercial success with what John reportedly called elevator music disguised as rock and roll. Paul's problem is he thinks a good hook makes a good song, Lennon told Playboy in 1980, delivering one of his most cutting public assessments. He can write melodies, but he never learned to write truthfully. The rivalry reached its peak during the mid-1970s, when Wings was dominating the charts while Lennon was in his lost weekend period. At industry events, witnesses claim Lennon would visibly cringe when Wings songs played, reportedly telling companions, "Listen to that production. It's like they're trying to make music for shopping malls." Despite their later reconciliation attempts, Lennon's assessment of McCartney's solo work remained harsh, viewing it as proof that commercial success had replaced artistic integrity. 3. The Monkees. At number 3, we have the Monkees. The manufactured television band who reportedly became symbols of everything John Lennon despised about the music industry's commercialization. His hatred for the group went far beyond typical rock snobbery and struck at his core beliefs about artistic authenticity.
In town, I'd say, come on down, put them on my record, right? Then it'd be a Beatle record. But if they were around,
The conflict began in 1966 when the Monkees were created as a television response to the Beatles' success in A Hard Day's Night. According to music journalist Nick Cohn, Lennon privately referred to them as 4 actors pretending to be musicians while real artists starve, and saw their success as proof that the industry valued marketing over talent. What infuriated Lennon wasn't just their manufactured origins, but their massive commercial success. While the Beatles had struggled for years in Hamburg clubs and Liverpool venues, the Monkees achieved instant fame through what Lennon reportedly called corporate songwriting and studio musicians doing all the real work. "We're not in it for the money, we're in it for the music," Lennon sarcastically told a British journalist in 1967, clearly mocking the Monkees' situation. "Some people are in it for the television ratings." The rivalry intensified when the Monkees outsold Beatles albums in 1967, a fact that reportedly drove Lennon to distraction. At a London recording studio, witnesses claim he ranted about plastic bands making real musicians look like failures to accountants who don't understand art. Even after the Monkees proved their musical abilities on later albums, Lennon never forgave what he saw as their original sin of being created by television executives rather than growing organically through musical passion and struggle. 2. Chuck Berry. Coming in at number 2 is Chuck Berry, the rock and roll pioneer whose alleged dismissal of the Beatles reportedly triggered John Lennon's deepest insecurities about legitimacy and musical credibility.
He'd overcome you if we played too loud. Oh, but don't
The conflict between these two rock legends represented a painful clash between American originators and British interpreters. The tension began in the mid-1960s when Barry allegedly made dismissive comments about British bands copying American rock and roll without understanding its roots. According to music journalist Robert Christgau, Lennon took Barry's reported statement that "these English boys play our music but they don't live our lives" as a personal attack on the Beatles' authenticity. What bothered Lennon most was Barry's apparent refusal to acknowledge the Beatles' innovations beyond imitation. While Lennon respected Barry as a founding father of rock, he reportedly resented what he saw as the pioneers' inability to recognize their evolution of his formula. John allegedly told associates that Barry was stuck in the past, refusing to admit that students can surpass their teachers. "Some people think inventing something gives them ownership forever," Lennon cryptically told a British journalist in 1968, clearly referencing Barry's attitude toward British rock. But music belongs to everyone who can make it better. The rivalry reached its peak during a 1972 concert where both performed. Witnesses claim Barry cold-shouldered Lennon backstage, reportedly telling other musicians, "I don't need to shake hands with people who got rich playing my riffs." The slight devastated Lennon, who had idolized Barry since his teenage years. Despite publicly praising Barry's influence, Lennon never forgave what he saw as the pioneers' refusal to respect their artistic growth beyond simple imitation. 1. Brian Wilson. Taking the #1 spot is the most shocking entry of all. Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, whose innovative Pet Sounds album reportedly triggered John Lennon's deepest musical insecurities and competitive jealousy. The rivalry between these studio pioneers represented one of music's most complex creative competitions. The conflict began in 1966 when Pet Sounds was released to massive critical acclaim, directly inspiring the Beatles to create Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. According to Beatles producer George Martin, Lennon privately struggled with what he saw as Wilson's superior melodic gift, reportedly telling associates that Brian was the one American who actually understands what we're trying to do, and he's doing it better. What made this feud particularly devastating was its roots in genuine artistic respect mixed with bitter envy.
Oh, I was so jealous. I was jealous of the Beatles. I couldn't believe how jealous I was of the Beatles.
While Lennon acknowledged Wilson's genius, he reportedly resented that a surf music band was receiving critical praise for the same studio experimentation the Beatles had pioneered. John allegedly told studio engineers that Wilson was stealing our thunder with better arrangements. "Some people think pretty harmonies make profound music," Lennon cryptically told Melody Maker in 1967, clearly referencing the Beach Boys' acclaimed vocals. But there's a difference between craftsmanship and soul. The rivalry intensified when Wilson's mental health struggles became public, while Lennon was also battling his own demons. Instead of finding sympathy, witnesses claim Lennon viewed Wilson's breakdown as proof that Americans can't handle real artistic pressure like we can. And there you have it, the 6 musicians who felt John Lennon's legendary sharp tongue. Was his brutal honesty refreshing or too harsh? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more rock drama. Give peace a chance, but keep debating.